Warning. The following episode contains subject matter and scenes that some viewers may find upsetting, disturbing, or unnerving. Please note, viewer discretion is advised at all times. Sit back and enjoy.
Oh, what a queer house it was. In all America, there was none other like it. Its chimneys stuck out where chimneys should never stick out. Its stairways ended nowhere in particular. Winding passages brought the uninitiated with a frightful jerk back to where they had started from. There were rooms that had no doors. There were doors that had no rooms. A mysterious house, it was indeed. A crooked house. A reflex of the builder's own distorted mind. In that house occurred dark and eerie deeds.
Welcome to I Could Murder a Podcast, episode number 7 of Series 5. I'm Tom Norris and I'm joined by Mr. Motivation, Ben Carter.
Motivation by name, motivation by nature. It's very, very good to be back with another episode. Last week was bleak.
Yeah, I think all of them tend to be.
Most of them tend to be bleak. It was a particularly bleak week last week. But it's good to be back. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well indeed. And producer Dan, how are you, sir?
Hello, boys. Welcome back. And cheers to everybody watching and listening.
That's a very good point, Dan. Yeah, lovely feedback so far, lovely comments, whole new bunch of subscribers and followers. And what else can you do these days? You can subscribe, you can follow, you can like, you can share. I feel like I'm missing something. But you're all doing it, and we appreciate it very much.
And to those of a keen eye who are watching this week's episode, might notice something slightly different about this. New headphones. Basically, left my headphones here last week. The lovely dog that is Judgy, the resident dog, because of the studio bed. No offense to Vince and Vince and Gus.
None taken.
They're still very much alive.
Yes.
My headphones left and bit into buggery, so we thought we'd treat ourselves to some new headphones. But not only that, we've actually changed the setup to our Patreon setup. Ben, do you want to explain to them why we chose to do that?
We started filming our Patreon episodes in this format, and we found that the energy was slightly different. We could see each other, we could incorporate producer Dan much more evenly, which we enjoy, and it just felt like a nicer vibe.
I think the big thing for me was if one of us is reading or going off on one, the other one can kind of look a little bit vacant, a bit awkward. So it's quite nice to have the energy to cut between us. Keeps the energy up. Yeah, we thought we'd freshen it up a bit. A bit wild card to do it mid-series, but we thought we are wild card.
We are wild card.
That's the wild card energy we were after. And also, you might notice we've changed the name of the channel over here on YouTube to ICMOP.
Absolutely. We figured that murder was doing us no favours. Although it's doing us favours in terms of content, it's doing us no favours in terms of the algorithm. If you try and search I Can Murder a Podcast on YouTube, we don't pop up until after the word murder has been put in. So, ICMAP it be. This was one where I've always been aware of H.H. Holmes. By the way, it's the case of H.H. Holmes. Let's throw up some dramatic music. H.H. Holmes.
As well with the setup, we tend to do it at a different level. It's more relaxed. We're like, that'll do. So be prepared for that. H.H. Holmes, also known as the Beast of Chicago, the American Ripper, America's first serial killer, Dr. Death, the Archfiend, the Torture Doctor, Judson, the Devil in the White City.
And the Beast of Chicago.
That's the first one I did. But that's the first one I did on the list.
And Alexander Bond. He went by Alexander Bond.
Yeah, that's not the titles, is it?
Working.
Trying to make people want to watch it.
Bond, I presume. They might be interested.
Yeah, I get it. But we're going with H.H. Holmes, The Devil Inside the Man.
Yeah, very aware of H.H. Holmes. He's been on our list for a while.
They all are.
They all
wanted to do this in Series 1.
Was that supposed to be me?
I thought there was two of you in the room when I did it.
Yeah, I was looking around. But this case itself, I've always been under the impression that, that never happened. Come on, stop joking about it. Let's talk about some serious crime. But a lot of it, although there's conjecture at various points, and we love a bit of conjecture.
H.H. Holmes himself was very much a conjecturer.
Yeah, he had conjunctivitis.
That's serious, but
from the outside looking in, until I sat down and did the research for this case.
Sorry? It's outside looking in. Just imagine you at a window.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does sound very elaborate when you start, especially when you start mentioning the murder castle and things like that. That's when you go,
Yeah.
But then it turns out a lot of it is actually factually correct.
No, yeah, I think it was very easy to view this as like a horror movie or something, an urban legend, a myth. But when you actually sit down and do the research and look further into this case, my goodness, I was surprised that so much of it is true. It's horrifying, of course. Obviously, there's also elements where you're only going off H.H. Holmes's word. He was said to have been a compulsive liar. When doing research, that made it quite difficult, who to believe. The castle itself and the second castle, I didn't even really know about the second one. So, yeah, excited to jump into this case. I always like going back to the oldies, doing like the late 1800s, early 1900s, Albert Fish, Nanny Doss Fish.
Ed Gein. I've recently found, because I've been really shit with lookalikes recently, Ed Gein, put it in the group the other day, neither of them reacted to it. Ed Gein looks exactly like someone from, on 90 Day Fiancé, a guy called Gino looks the spitting image of Ed Gein.
And if you haven't already, guys, all of the socials at Could Murder a Pod, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, just search I Could Murder a Podcast will pop up. We also have a Patreon page, loads of extra content over there if you just can't get enough. In terms of the socials as well, the episode case vote is coming up very, very soon. We like to do this every series. That will be held over on our Instagram page. Basically, you can recommend or suggest any case you want to see us cover. I'm convinced it's going to be 2 people.
But you said it every time, and it's never been them.
Fingers crossed, because they're big boys.
Yeah, we've done. I'm not intimidated by any case now because I feel like we've done ones that are massive. So I'm not
intimidated.
Yeah. Don't let Ben's worries affect your vote. Just the one that gets most votes obviously will win. We will basically pop up a video or whatever. You guys just put the name of the case you want. We tally them all up on Facebook and on Insta, and then essentially it'll go into a versus round, a final.
I'm calling it now. I know the final 2. So we move into the second half of Series 5. We really hope everyone enjoyed last week's episode, Chris Watts. I think compared to every other case, he had a very normal childhood, and that's quite the opposite in this week's case. We've got another bunch of episodes coming up in this series, and as we go on, the cases just get bigger and bigger.
They do indeed. We do end the series with a lot of big hitters, and we're very much looking forward to showing you guys all of those cases as well. Big shout out to Gully Garms as well for dressing us this series. I've worn this once before, to be honest.
It's nice, I like it.
And I've said for you, Mr. Motivator kind of vibes I was getting.
Yeah.
On his day off. Maybe he's going to play golf.
Why can't it just be regular, plain old-fashioned Mr. Motivator?
Because he usually wears an actual lycra.
Oh, well, if you let me know, I could have.
I would hate to see that.
And for yourself, I could see you with the Menendez brothers.
Alfred and the Chipmunks.
That as well, yeah.
But anyway, Ben, enough chitty chat. Should we get into the case?
Yeah, absolutely. And before we jump in, obviously, the information about this case with us going back so many years, late 1800s, early 1900s, it has been very sensationalized, and we're probably going to sensationalize it a little bit more.
I'm going to stick to the truth.
Yeah, I'm going to, at any point I can push it, I will push it.
You like to bend the truth sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes If it's going to get a laugh or a...
As long as you just down a lie for no reason. There's no gain to it. You just go, I'm just going to lie about this and see if I can get away with it, which is interesting.
It's a dangerous path.
I'd like to know what our resident doctor, Dr. Das, would have to say about that. We'll be hearing from him later about HH.
He'll never analyse me. Let's not make that content because I'm scared.
Yeah, he'll find some fucking skeletons in that closet, boy. This comes new. Fresh, new.
Now, for a lot of H.H. Holmes' childhood, there are many conflicting reports as to what actually happened. So you can either take the words of Holmes himself, who would very much paint a picture of kind of a childhood rife with abuse, or you can also take the kind of claims of multiple eyewitness accounts or locals that grew up with him who claimed actually he had an otherwise ordinary kind of plain sailing childhood. It's quite interesting.
It's tricky though, because they wouldn't have seen what goes on behind closed doors, the neighbours and stuff.
Or in the woods.
Yeah. Well, they could do. They're more likely to see that.
Well, they might. Yeah, I mean, it's deep woods. From what?
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he might not.
He's bending the truth again here, ladies and gentlemen. He's already.
Bending the. But one thing we do know for a fact is that Herman Webster Mudgett.
Bop it, spin it, mudge it.
Was born on May the 16th, 1861, in Gilmanton, New Hampshire.
It's quite the name, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, the journey to H.H. Holmes that we're going to go on, Herman Webster Mudgett, HWM.
Mudgett sounds quite like a bully.
Quite sweet.
Mudgett?
I think it's more like kind of...
Sweet.
Yeah, like the Roald Dahl.
The Roald Dahl?
The Roald Dahl.
Roald Dahl.
Next door to the Buckets. The Mudgetts. Granddad in one bed and... Wow. in the context of this case. Let's not, but you know what I mean.
I want to know more about the granddad in the one bed. How many beds should he be in?
So what do we know about Gilmanton?
Not a lot. Can you tell us some more?
Of course I can. That's
Thank
what
you,
I'm here for. Small town knowledge is kind of my thing now. Gilmanton, what do we know about Gilmanton?
It was founded in December 1761, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, that's just a hunch I've got.
Spot on. Well, the small farming township of Gilmanton, yeah, you're absolutely right.
I don't know why you're repeating it.
I don't know. It's weird that I am, but I'm going to. It was founded in December of 1761 by a man of the name Benjamin Mudgett. There's that name again. Who was one of the first white settlers to arrive there. It's hard to find online and even harder for me to count the years back if he was a direct relation of Herman Webster Mudgett. But if he was, I believe he would have been his great-great-great-grandfather. So he came from the family that potentially founded Gilmanton.
Not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah.
Very little, if anything, Ben.
Yeah.
To be fair. And thanks to anyone who did tell Ben they enjoyed the small town knowledge. Herman was the son of Levi Horton Mudgett and Theodate Page Price, who are both descendants of some of the very first British immigrants to arrive in America. Theodate is an interesting name. And Levi Horton is a good name. Herman was the middle Mudgett, the Mudgett in the middle. He had an older brother called Arthur and an older sister called Ellen, as well as two younger siblings, a younger brother called Henry and a younger sister called Mary. So Arthur, Ellen, Henry, Mary and Herman Mudgett. The gag Ben did at the beginning, which we all thought was off the cuff and quite good, is written the same gag in here. Very much sounds like the Roald Dahl tale. The Mudgett's next door to the Buckets. Grandad has one bed.
I riffed the Grandad has one bed part.
It's weird how that's the bit that fucked up.
The Mudgetts were a privileged upper-class family owning lots of farmland and nice houses in the Gilmanton area. They were said to have been very wealthy, but also very devout Methodists, and they took religion and good old-fashioned family values extremely seriously. So they wanted to raise young Herman in a strictly Methodist environment.
So the Mudgett's ancestors were all farmers. Although his father Levi was very much someone that wanted to earn his money in multiple ways, he worked as a farmer, a house painter, and trader. So didn't Ed Gain do a bit of house painting?
He could do a bit of a handyman.
Yeah.
Put a fence up for you, cut some grass.
Sew your skin up, make a little outfit. And despite what would be a fairly fractured relationship, a young Herman very much looked up to his father. So yeah, be an odd jobsman, someone get his money where he can. It's definitely something that he kind of aspired to be like.
Definitely. His mother, Theodate, which again, is an interesting name. She drove religion into the Mudgett children from a very early age. So she often forced them to spend any of their spare time focusing on religious studies. She was said to, at the same time, have been a very cold and distant woman, rarely showing any signs of kindness or affection. She was very emotionally absent from the rest of the Mudgett children.
Just imagine her outside when it's winter, just at the back of the garden. Going, why are you being so cold and distant, Mum? Cut that out once. I thought it was funny when I was doing it.
Did it get you down?
I got a right smile.
A little one.
So Herman's father, Levi, he ruled the house with an iron fist, which is very common in these cases, and he also had several battles with alcoholism. He was incredibly strict and at times was also physically and allegedly sexually abusive to all the Mudgett children, but he was apparently particularly harsh on young Herman and Henry, who was the youngest. It is said that Levi would often become violent after a few drinks, and whenever he felt that the Mudgett children were acting out, he would either isolate them and shut them away from the rest of the family as punishment, which would result in them being not fed and kind of being kept away, or he would smother them with a rag soaked in kerosene and chloroform, which is unthinkable. But like we said, this is kind of falling into the conjecture.
Yeah, now neighbours said he was a lovely dad. No
He'd just
issues.
walk around with his rag. We didn't know what it was covered in. We just thought he was going to wash a boot.
So potentially, there is a lot of abuse in the Mudgett household, although again, this is all coming from Herman, later H.H. Holmes' perspective. He was a very smart child, and from an early age, he would excel at school. He was considered highly intelligent and very much enjoyed reading, his favourite books being the works of Edgar Allan Poe. He would also learn as well from identified behaviour of his father that as soon as his father picked up a bottle or started drinking, he would retreat into the nearby woods just outside of the family farm. Which again, woods, we've discussed woods a lot lately.
We're not going to go down this.
Yeah.
Because then you'll end up talking about a childhood game, you'll misinterpret what it means, it'll end up be someone trying to dissolve something with sticks.
Okay, yeah, we don't want to go down that stream. But yeah, as soon as he spotted his father drinking, he would retreat into the woods, take a few books with him, and he did this to avoid any potential beatings or any kind of confrontation.
I'm sure as well it's going to be escapism as well, with reading the books and being somewhere else and losing himself within that. So as we said, it's hard to tell with this in some aspects as we'll go on, because like Ben mentioned early on, Herman, who would grow up to be H.H. Holmes, he likes to bend the truth an awful lot. So him recounting his childhood, it's one of those, well, why would he lie? And maybe as well with him being so fond of literature and fiction that he kind of liked to bend the truth in that regard as well.
Well, as he would retreat into the woods, he would also explore the woods, and subsequently some people have said, although I say some people have said, it's probably H.H. Holmes. I mean, who would make this up? This resulted in Herman finding and torturing wild animals.
He's written an autobiography, didn't he? I'm not sure if that information came directly from that, but yeah, who else is implying that unless it was a passing comment and they've kind of, I mean, it would make a lot of sense in terms of what he'd go on to do. That's always a pattern, isn't it, within this, in terms of torturing animals. So
yeah, and we'll talk about that more shortly, because it doesn't end there, unfortunately.
It'd be a very short episode if it did.
Yeah.
So when Herman was 11 years old, one of his only friends was a local boy named Tom, and they would go on to explore an abandoned house. Tom climbed onto a ledge of the house and would fall to his death in front of Herman, with a lot of people believing that Herman was in fact responsible for the pushing of Tom off the ledge, which again is like, if it's his only friend,
Tom not here to tell the tale.
No.
So from a very early age, one of his only friends has fallen to his death. Again, there's a lot of conjecture as to whether this was accidental or whether Herman was in fact responsible for it, but then he's been exposed to death from a very early age. He was also a socially awkward child. He didn't like to make eye contact with others and would keep very much to himself. The only friend apparently that he did have fell off a ledge.
Allegedly.
Very good. And yeah, he would very much prefer, when there was any kind of conflict in his life, any kind of trauma, he would just retreat into the woods, take his books with him. And unfortunately, as a result of this, he was bullied relentlessly. So when Herman was 13, two older boys dragged him into the local doctor's office. The pair that grabbed him were bullies, and they were aware that Herman was particularly easily frightened. So what the boys did was shut Herman in a cupboard with a human skeleton, and they placed him essentially kind of face to face with it. Now, instead of scaring Herman, he actually became kind of fascinated by the skeleton and by the experience itself. So
yeah, apparently the skeleton had his arms kind of wide open, and he was kind of looking at it. I think initially he was a bit scared and creeped out, but then he kind of, with time in there, got more intrigued by the human form and the skeleton. And it's been said that this perhaps was a very big moment in his life in terms of making him intrigued by the insides of humans.
Definitely, and he would then choose to pursue those kind of feelings of intrigue by wanting to then go on. It kind of fueled his desire to start studying medicine. And I mean, the skeleton with arms wide open, creed, I just left it way too long. So the childhoods we've explored so far, Tom, with the exception of Chris Watts, have all been fairly bleak, fairly brutal. H.H. Holmes so far, or Herman, experienced animal cruelty, exposure to death from an early age, physical abuse, emotional abuse, alleged sexual abuse, and relentlessly bullied. So bad childhood bingo, that is pretty much, with the exception of no bedwetting, a full house.
We don't know for sure he didn't bedwet. Maybe he blamed it on a family member, a family's member.
The granddad in the bed.
And the little one said,
"You pissed yourself."
There's a lot of things we say very often, Ben, on this podcast. Let us know in the comments below. Maybe an I Could Murder a podcast based bingo.
Love to play.
Yeah, it'd usually be red flags. We wanted to do this episode for a long time.
Avatar.
No,
foreshadowing.
We got rid of. We cut those out when you say those things.
Sorry, Ben Carter bingo. Don't comment about that, guys, please.
Ben Carter bingo would be quite easy. Yeah, let us know Ickbat bingo. I think we say certain things we say quite regularly. We've been told, well, red flags, conjecture. You'd let us know that in the comments below. Some words we say on the regulars.
One thing I've noticed I say quite a lot is at the time, particularly when I'm in the timeline. I say at the time a lot. Sorry if I've killed us for you. If that ruined, if you've gone off us now, because I do say that a lot. I say it a lot.
Yeah,
at the time, yeah, I do.
It feels familiar.
Huh.
Yeah.
Really familiar.
And if that's put people off, I'm sorry.
So as Herman got older, he started trapping wild animals in the woods nearby his family home, and he would dissect these animals. So, I mean, you could argue it still falls under the category of torturing them, because obviously he'd be killing them. but it was more to do amateur surgeries on them. This included snakes, rabbits, and even dogs and cats. I think it still very much falls under the torture side of things, but his fascination grew a lot more with the kind of anatomy of animals and humans.
Yeah, and he wouldn't kill them first and then perform these amateur surgeries as well. Like he'd do this while they were still alive, which is particularly disturbing. At the age of 16, Herman graduated from Phillips Exeter Academy and took up various teaching jobs in Gilmerton. He was said to have again been very socially awkward through his teens, and in fact, in some occasions, very socially inappropriate. So as he was in various teaching roles, often maintaining eye contact for extensive and unnerving periods of time, and also placing his hands on his students for extensive periods of time, which gives me a little bit of a Chikatilo. Do you remember he had like a small teaching role?
He was bullied by his students, though, wasn't he?
It didn't quite go his way, which we're happy about, but wasn't he inappropriate with a lot of his students?
When he punished them, he would do things, but he essentially would be teaching them and then be bullied by them massively.
Yeah, just get a very Chikatilo vibe from him in his teaching days.
So despite his social awkwardness, many women were apparently attracted to him. Again, this could be him inflating his own ego, describing him as charming, clever and smooth. And he's also very fond of his female students and neighbours. This would very much run through Herman's life later on. He seemed to...
Bit of a ladies' man.
He would later be described by detectives as a social chameleon, which perhaps explains why there are so many different opinions and perspectives for who he actually was and how he behaved. Great word for him going forward in terms of he would very much change who he was an awful lot.
So on July 4th, 1878, when Herman was just 17 years old, he married Clara Lovering, who was the daughter of a local and very wealthy farmer. And a year and a half after that, the pair had a son that they named Robert Lovering Mudgett. And it is alleged that shortly after the birth of their son, Herman very much lost interest in his wife. He fell head over heels with her at the time, but very much lost interest. Started to spend a lot of time away from the family home, disappeared days on end, and a lot of rumours were going about. And again, this might be his own words, but apparently he was only interested and attracted to her due to the fact that she came from a very wealthy family.
As we mentioned earlier on, though, with his dad, who was very kind of making money in different kinds of ways. I think wealth was something that very much drove Herman, and I think that does make a lot of sense. And he probably thought as well, having a kid with her very much ties and anchors him into that family as well. So Herman would go on to enroll in the University of Vermont in Burlington at age 18, but did not enjoy the learning content of the school and left after just 1 year. So the following year, in 1882, he enrolled in the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and graduated in June 1884 after passing his exams. However, this was not without a couple of controversies.
So whilst living and studying in Michigan, Herman and Professor William James Herdman, who was at the time the chief anatomy instructor of the university, the two basically got into a bit of an agreement wherein they agreed to engage in the facilitating of grave robbing. So what they would do is they would dig up bodies and supply them as medical cadavers, but Herman would also go one further than this and dig up cadavers of his own to then go on to sell separately outside of this agreement to schools, medical professionals and scientists. He would also use them to go on to conduct various insurance frauds. So yeah, it's quite an escalation. There's a bit of conjecture around Herman allegedly engaging in life insurance fraud, with some saying that he wasn't able to provide bodies that perfectly matched the description of their victims. Other things that we've looked at state that he would actually burn and manipulate the bodies of the cadavers that he dug up to then say, okay, it was an explosion or an accident. And it depends which side you believe. But apparently, he would make a lot of money supplying cadavers to various third parties.
I always thought that was a dead market. Well, whilst Herman was at the college, he had a roommate named Fred Ingalls. And Fred was very much the gentleman, and he clashed a lot with Herman. He didn't think Herman was a very nice man, or he didn't believe with his kind of beliefs. He knew that Herman was married, but Herman was spending a lot of time with the landlord's daughter, and he thought that was very improper. Herman basically, he said to Fred, he broke up a very strange deal with Fred. He basically said, if you don't tell anyone I'm married, I won't go out womanizing, which seems to be like a very odd thing. It's like, if you leave your Maltesers out, I won't eat them. Yeah. If you hide them away, I'm not going to have it. I'll eat them up.
He goes, have you told anyone about my wife? No. All right, I'll see you in about 4 hours.
I'm off to the clubs. So it's a very odd thing to agree there. So Herman and Fred would actually have physical altercations a couple of times. One time, which I think is hilarious, and it's very much of the time, was because Fred was using Herman's moustache wax without asking permission, which is a big no-no. Don't do that. I've never tried it. I haven't got That kind
Mustache wax.
Mustache wax.
That kind of got a pomade vibe, like wet and greasy. I imagine mustache wax would be to
It's the
part it.
people that kind of do the old little...
Oh, the twiddle.
The twiddle.
Oh.
But then another brawl would ensue when Fred was disagreeing basically with how close Herman was being with the landlady's daughter, and this would actually result in a fight between the two, and Fred would end up with a black eye.
Yeah, well, he's the perfect gentleman, Fred, so probably wasn't a cultured fighter. So housemates described Herman as also not only being physically aggressive to Fred, but also treating his wife Clara violently during the very little time that they had to spend together. And in 1884, just before his graduation, she decided to move back to New Hampshire and later wrote that she barely heard from her husband Herman after this moment. Throughout his time at university, he would very much study and again keep to himself with very little friends and acquaintances. He would go out and kind of fraternize, womanize, all the I's. And just 2 H's, 3 H's, fuck. So Herman didn't seem to enjoy very much male company. He would keep to himself, he would study, very little friends, very little acquaintances, but he would still desire the companionship of women. And he would make multiple acquaintances frequently out on the town, making many new relationships during his time at university. And apparently one of his first lines to the women that he would meet, and if he would take them out, would be, "Can I interest you in some life insurance?" And he's not just flogging dead happy.
It's an interesting opening line, but I guess as long as you have to mix it up, don't you? On taking outs, people want to hear something different. What's your most interesting starting line?
Starting line? Because I've recently learned of the phrase, "Have you ever counted shoulders?" And I'd never heard of that. And it would be so much more effective if we were still sat together, but fortunately for you, we're not.
1, 2, and you put the arm around them?
Yeah. So it's hey baby, have you ever counted shoulders? And they usually say,
"Fuck off, creep." They call me baby.
So yeah, you basically go, have you ever counted shoulders? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Why don't you just do 1, 2 and get the arm around them?
Well, because it's not 2 shoulders, it's 4.
Their shoulders, 1, 2.
You're being.
Why are you going 1, 2, 3, 4?
No, you're being too forward there, mate.
I'm not doing it.
The other one is you check the label.
A boyfriend material.
Just as I thought. Made in heaven.
That's not what that is.
Oh, is that not what it is?
It's boyfriend material, isn't it?
Oh.
Yeah, do you have life insurance? Is an odd... I don't think that would be received in the best kind of way. It's a very odd question to ask.
Yeah.
So Herman wooed one particular lady, a widow from Brooklyn, to the point where she proposed marriage to him, which is very rare nowadays, but usually on New Year's Eve, isn't it? Is it on a leap year? It's
leap year. When's
good,
the next?
Good friend Josh and Rachel. Rachel proposed to Josh on New Year's. He agreed and gave his promise, however, later backed out. At the time, this was regarded as a breach of promise, which was a very serious crime in the 1800s. If proven, this would have caused Herman to spend time in prison and made him miss out on his graduation.
I think that's great. Breach of a promise, not the seducing a poor old widow from Brooklyn.
Yeah, but people can change their mind.
Yeah, people can change their mind, but if you're going to change your mind, don't make a promise. Do you know what I mean?
You think if you're engaged, you just should put up with it?
Oh, no. But if he promises, I'll be there, I'm going to do this, then,
That's essentially what engagement is, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, you could, I'm sure divorce existed then. Breach of a promise, though. Like if I
so you think it's better for that if he knows it's not going to work, wait to be in a marriage with him and then divorce?
Yeah.
That's better.
Follow the process. Don't breach
rather
a promise.
than just get it done and dusted out before.
Breach a marriage, don't breach a promise.
Okay.
Do you know? Yeah.
The case went public and his classmates and teachers were stunned by the events. His partner in crime, an anatomy professor, Herman, defended him and even made a statement of his character to Herman's defence, and he was pardoned as a result. The claim of his defence was it was a herd mentality.
Ooh. But yeah, very interesting. So this was the professor that was also stealing cadavers and selling cadavers with him. Basically came forward to say, look, there's no chance that Herman would have made a promise he couldn't keep.
Nobody's perfect.
Oh.
No bodies. Perfect in these graves because I've stopped them.
So as a result of Professor Herdman's defence, jumping to the defence of Herman, he was pardoned. And weirdly, just after he was pardoned, he was allowed to graduate. Shortly after this, Herman then told the professor that in fact he was lying all along and had broken the promise. He also then made an extra admission to say that he had also robbed the professor's house twice whilst studying his teachings.
This is an ongoing theme that happens with Herman. He likes to scam, but he likes to scam when the person realises he's been scammed by him. That's the big thing. Otherwise, it's not worth scamming.
If he just does a scam and gets away with it, that's not enough.
No, he needs to know and rub it in the face. That's his
He's
big
petty.
thing. He is petty.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, as Tom said, he's very much a fan of, he'll pull a con, but the con isn't complete until he's rubbed it in the person he's con's face.
It's like Punk'd, but Ashton Kutcher needs to come out.
Yeah.
If Ashton Kutcher doesn't come out, what's the point of doing Punk'd?
Well, yeah, it's just pun.
Or Rio Ferdinand with Mercked.
So Professor Herdman would later write, "This was the first positive evidence I had received." And bearing in mind, I will finish the quote, but Professor Herdman
Had been nicking bodies with him.
Exactly. So hardly the best judge of character. This was the first positive evidence I had received up until that time that the fellow was a scoundrel.
The lady is a tramp. Like we said before, he would dissect animals and all this stuff. He liked to do a lot of homework.
Yeah.
And one of his things he would do, operate a small chemistry lab out of his boarding house. And at one stage, a cleaner of his boarding home actually found a dead baby under his bed. It's a horrible sentence in itself, but Herman is Schroeder. We know we're doing dissection, and this is just for me being able to practice at home, dissecting a body.
Yeah. And his roommate, Ingalls, the perfect gentleman, was like,
"That's not very gentlemanly, having a dead baby under your bed." Oh, put it in the bin.
So as Tom said, Herman always wanted to make a quick buck, always looking for the next con. I mean, he's got a chemistry lab at the end of his bed, and well, we know what's under the bed. But he was constantly motivated to create his own medicine patent. He tried to, at one point, when there was a small outbreak of smallpox,
A tiny outbreak of smallpox.
Thank you. He tried to con locals with a supposed vaccine for the smallpox that he pretended also was government mandated. So he would go around selling these very small bottles of smallpox vaccine for 25 cents per bottle, which was roughly $6.50. And he made a small fortune in doing this, which allowed him...
a small fortune from small bottles for smallpox vaccine.
Yeah.
And apparently he would call it, it wasn't a Moderna vaccine, it was my little Erna vaccine. Fucking hell. Fucking. So after graduating, Herman moved to New York, and a rumour spread that Herman had been spotted with a little boy who later disappeared. Herman claimed the boy went back to his home in Massachusetts, and no investigation took place, and Herman quickly left town.
He's moving all the time, this guy.
He is. And remember as well, he's got a daughter and a wife back home. So with that, when he did leave, there was some attempt or loose attempt of them breaking up. It wasn't a case of he left them and was going to return to them, but it was never officially officiated in the sense of the divorce.
He just ran away going, "I never promised that."
Exactly.
That's what we think happened.
So Herman would later travel to Philadelphia, where he took a position at a drugstore. But whilst working there, a boy would die after taking medicine that was purchased at the store. So Holmes denied any involvement in the death and then would immediately go on to leave the city.
He would then go on to take another role. This is shortly before he moved to Chicago. So he's moving about all the time now. But he's now working in a doctor's office, and he was approached by another doctor who went by the name of Dr. Steely. He asked Herman to conduct an autopsy on one of his patients. It was a patient who was actually dying as a result of a wound he experienced during the Civil War. So he's a war veteran. The autopsy was needed in order for the veteran to provide his wife with his military pension. Now, after the gentleman passed away, Herman removed the bullet that fatally killed him during the war, and he also removed all of his ribs. He then immediately refused to sign the autopsy confirming the cause of death, which would release the pension, unless Dr. Steely paid him an unusually high amount of money. So he's kind of holding him to ransom over body parts and a bullet.
Wow.
Bleak. Dr. Steely then threatened to go to the police about the matter, and again, Herman fled the town, this time heading for the streets of Chicago. And it's here that he's no longer known as Herman, but decides to change his name to H.H. Holmes.
And it's here that we go to the timeline.
1886. Herman Webster Mudgett moved to Chicago and took a job as a pharmacist, operating under the new name Dr. Henry Howard Holmes.
Triple H.
H.H. Holmes.
Yes, it's the birth of the new name. As names go, Henry Howard Holmes.
H.H. Holmes. That could be like a,
H.H. Holmes sounds good.
Yeah.
But the Henry Howard.
What would you have gone for instead?
If it has to be H.H. still?
Yeah.
I'd probably say Hugo
Yeah.
Hernandez Holmes.
That is better than his. Yeah, fair play. Yeah, H.H. Holmes. I like that. I could see H.H. Holmes with a big band. So
Can we call H.H. Holmes and see if he can change it? Producer Dan, can you get in touch with him, please?
Sorry, I was just looking. How would you naturally pronounce H? Is it H or H?
I'm a H guy.
I'm a HH.
I think H is incorrect.
You're an H guy.
No, I'm not either, to be honest.
But it's a house. It's not a...
Yeah, but the
H.
letter I'm talking about, not the...
Good question.
How do you pronounce...
Not the little girl.
The letter H.
I mean, it's a valid point. H. Holmes. H. Holmes. The drugstore.
Just the letter H.
H.
You can still say Holmes with
Was it H from Steps or H from Steps?
H.
H. Let us know in the comments.
The drugstore he worked at belonged to the Holton family, and it was situated at the northwest corner of South Wallace Avenue and West 63rd Street, which was in Englewood. There are varying reports of the disappearance of Elizabeth Holton and her husband, with some claiming that the husband had died and the wife then sold the store to H. Holmes before she also disappeared, with others claiming that Holmes portrayed himself as a hard-working employee who bought the store legitimately from the Holtons, who continued living long into the 20th century.
On that, there is evidence of that family moving on and moving somewhere else, so it's unlikely that Holmes did actually kill them. They didn't just go, Henry Howard, do you want to buy this property? The reason why they got to the stage where they had to sell it was because things were starting to go missing in there, and they're starting to lose profits. And who was the person stealing all the goods? It was only Henry Howard Holmes.
Yeah.
Holmes and he's filling up his homes with their goods.
Yeah.
So yeah, he basically thought, I can put these guys out of business from thieving.
Yeah. Took all their stock.
Took all their stock, and then he
hid it around the block.
He edged them into a corner, like, I guess you're going to have to sell the place. I'm interested. So yeah, he basically, his plan worked. Holmes also purchased an empty space across from the drugstore, began converting into a 3-story building, taking up the entire block of 63rd and Wallace Streets. He's got money to throw about, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Those cadavers went for some serious dollar.
Expensive cadavers, smallpox vaccine. He's also swindled a lot of pharmacy stock. And, he came from a wealthy family as well. So who knows where all of that mass wealth suddenly appeared from. But also there's more to it, as we're going to go on to speak about this 3-story building. So basically he would contract a bunch of different workers to start building this property. And at various different points, once the first floor went up, second floor went up, he would have arguments, staged kind of arguments with the workers to say that he didn't agree with what they were doing, or that's not exactly how I wanted it. And he would strike them off and sack them, therefore trying to avoid or declining to pay them altogether. So he declined to pay the architects, declined to pay the steel company, declined to pay the builders.
I've got a friend, he purchases things out of Amazon, claims they're defected, I guess refund and keeps the items. He does that a lot.
Oh, yeah?
Ratty behaviour. Unlikely you're watching it, but if you are, that's ratty.
What's the biggest purchase he's made?
It's usually washing up powder and things like that. So during this time, Holmes was living the life of a single man. Despite still being married to Clara Lovering, he courted and married Myra Belknap. It was after the marriage that Holmes decided to file for divorce from his first wife. He prepared the papers and sent them to Clara, but she never received them, and as a result, the divorce was never finalised. He was actually trying to imply that she was having an affair and she was unfaithful. That can be, if there's enough evidence surrounding it, you can then get divorced very simply, but there was no witnesses because she wasn't being unfaithful. If anything, it's very much the other way.
Definitely.
Well, surely he could just say, I'm being unfaithful.
Yeah.
Maybe you wouldn't get as much in the divorce.
He seems to always want to paint himself in the winning light, in a positive light, and maybe that's why he was playing the victim card. Oh, I've been cheated on, and
I've been in the love ring and I've been knocked out. The bell's ringing with Belknap. Fuck.
1889. So during the construction of the 3-story building, Holmes hired and fired several construction crews rumoured to be so that no one would have a clear idea of what he was doing. Other explanations would be that he fell behind on payments to various construction companies and lenders. I'm inclined to believe it's a bit of both.
With Holmes regularly finding new loves, he would often put properties in their name, so if anything did go wrong, it wouldn't be a lawsuit at his door. He was doing it as, we're in love, I'll do this for you, but he very much was covering his back.
He was counting a lot of shoulders at that point.
He had a lot of homes to deal with. So the 4th of July, 1889, Holmes had a daughter with Myrta, Lucy Theodate Holmes. Although Holmes lived with Myrta and Lucy in Wilmot, Illinois, he spent most of his time in Chicago tending to the business. Again, but then when Holmes is away, Holmes does play.
And the builders he will not pay.
At Funhouse, Pat Sharp.
Yeah. And again, soon after a child enters the world, he disappears. He seems to... Responsibility of parenthood, Tom. I'm calling him out on it.
You should. There's many other things to call him out for.
Yeah,
but that is one.
That is one of them. Yeah, I'm starting a list. 1891. Construction is now completed on Holmes's three-story building, and he then begins to place ads in newspapers for young women looking for work, offering the house as a place of lodging. Very dubious circumstances here. So this big it's a massive building as well. It's not just, I mean, it's like a hotel in some aspects, like a mall in other aspects.
It's 3-story, isn't it? It's not just one movie, it's a whole franchise, Ben.
Yeah.
Rush Hour 3.
Yeah. One thing that he was really particular about is when placing adverts, he was very clear that he wanted female staff and would only have female staff that could utilize the place as a place of lodging. He also placed, at the same time, ads presenting himself as a wealthy man looking for a wife. So I don't know what his 2 other wives were thinking about that, if they ever saw the ad. I don't
sure
know.
they didn't.
You know, newspapers get recycled nowadays. Back then, I don't know.
It's fish and chip paper in Illinois. So, well, lovely fish and chips. What's that? Mr. Holmes. Holmes and away. Oh, he's playing away. 17th of April 1891, a creditor of Holmes named John de Broyle died of apoplexy in the drugstore. Questions have since been raised as to the real cause of the death. Now, apoplexy, Ben, you know a lot about this.
Know loads about it. If you just give me literally 5 seconds.
What are you typing?
Not typing anything, I'm just pressing one button.
Okay.
And it's pressed. Apoplexy back then is what is now regarded as a stroke. So it could be the rupture of an internal organ and symptoms that are to accompany that.
December 1891, Julia Smythe and husband Ned Connor moved into Holmes's hotel. Ned began working at the drugstore jewellery counter whilst Julia began an affair with Holmes. He started flirting with her. Whenever Ned wasn't in the room, he'd be very flirtatious. He knew they were having some difficulties. The walls were very thin.
Yes.
He could hear them arguing, bickering, and he was essentially he could hear what maybe Ned wasn't tenderness he wasn't showing, and then he would then purposely show that. Julia and Ned broke up. Ned moved away. Like we said before, Holmes wouldn't do things without bragging. It wouldn't count as a thing. So he actually revealed to Ned that him and Julia were an item.
Yeah.
And apparently Ned would go on to say that he said things that only someone that had been with her would know.
Yeah, no other man on earth would be able to tell him the one thing that he told him.
Which it's intriguing, isn't it? But
Really intriguing. Yeah, I'm guessing, well...
Go on. Birthmark? That's
probably birthmark.
I would go on birthmark.
Yeah, birthmark. Probably a birthmark.
So basically, Ned would leave, and he would leave Julia and their daughter Pearl behind at the hotel, and Julia gained custody of their daughter and continued her relationship with Holmes.
December 24th, 1891, Julia and Pearl disappeared. Holmes's version of the story is that Julia became pregnant and he attempted an abortion. And although he had a medical background, it is unlikely that Holmes was experienced enough and that mortality rates from an abortion at the time were very, very high. Julia died from the procedure and Holmes disposed of the body. He also claims to have poisoned Julia's daughter Pearl in order to hide the circumstances of her mother's death.
There begins to grow a theme here with Holmes finding a mistress and then getting them pregnant and not wanting to. Like we said before with his previous partners, a baby appears and he seems to push them away. But yeah, it's very dark. He claimed to her that he had the experience and, I'm sure he would have spun the yarn about all the things he's done before and stuff like that. But sadly... it wasn't successful, or maybe in his eyes it was successful in terms of what he wanted to do. This is a very disturbing bit of information. Apparently around this time, Holmes reportedly paid a local man to remove the skin from the corpse of an unusually tall woman. Julia stood at nearly 6 feet tall, and they sold her skeleton to a medical school, and there's no visible clues to the body's identity. Dan, people used to be shorter, didn't they, in the past?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Cheers, Dan.
Spot on.
All right.
And another intriguing thing, obviously, when you go into hotels, sometimes you have to leave your credit card there, just in case you go rock and roll and break the room down. So Holmes would get all his employees, hotel guests, to have life insurance policies, essentially. They're all required in order to stay there. Holmes paid the premiums as long as they listed him as the beneficiary, and a lot of his guests and employees would end up disappearing. And obviously he's the beneficiary there. People in the neighbourhood eventually reported that they saw many women enter the hotel, but would never see them exit.
This is the weird part. So if you're entering a hotel, on the ground floor, he's got a load of shops in there. He's got his pharmacy, he's peddling. We'll talk about, does that go
bike shop?
Yeah, that was good.
You might be interested to know the average height in the 17th and 18th century
Yes.
hit an all-time low.
Ooh.
Great band.
5'6" is the average height for women.
So yeah, I mean, the first floor, essentially, it was like if you imagine walking into a shopping mall. It had a load of storefronts, it had his pharmacy, and he wanted to bring in other investors and other stores to essentially operate out of the ground floor. So the only thing I can think of in this situation is that when he's saying, you know, you're going to need some life insurance, maybe he's saying that there's still some construction work going on, there's still things changing with the building.
You still would be a bit like, well, that's my business.
Yeah, but then if you want to feel safe, I'm going to pay for the premium for you, but you need to name me as the benefactor. So you don't.
I'll name my wife.
No, I'm paying for it. She's not paying a penny. So
Yeah, I just want to have it then. I'd rather.
let's come on. If you're going to come in,
I'll find somewhere else.
well, there's nowhere else, mate. Actually,
And then I ended up to be Mr. Woolworths. Bum, bum, bum. Wow, that was what a journey.
didn't expect that. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. He's offering to pay, obviously.
Maybe he's guaranteed, you know, look, just sign it to me, but I will pass it on to them.
That's also, highly likely. So 1892, Holmes then added the final and third floor to the building, telling investors and suppliers that he intended to use that floor as a hotel during the upcoming World's Fair. Though the third floor hotel portion was never fully completed, it was rumoured to contain rooms of furniture that Holmes hid away to prevent lenders from repossessing. On one occasion, workers from a local furniture company arrived to repossess its property, only to find the building empty.
Like we said before, he signs a lot of names, like with the beneficiaries. He used a lot of people, different people's names on deeds when he was, you know, getting people to build things, or when he was purchasing things. When the payments couldn't be made, he would very much wriggle his way out of things. It wasn't unusual for people to be at his door demanding things, demanding money, but he was a con man, essentially, wasn't he? And he was able to do all that. So yeah, he would very much move things around, hide things away, and get away with it.
So within the building as well, so he followed a similar tactic here, but he also got a large hidden vault installed in the basement. And basically the contractors that he had arranged, like it's a big, like heavy duty, like you'd expect to find it in a really high end bank. Once they'd installed it, built around it, a vault is now a large kind of walk-in vault. He's then refusing to pay them because it's not quite to the specifications that he wanted. When they're then demanding, okay, well, we'll repossess it, we'll take it back. He's gone, go ahead, take it back, but if you damage any of my building, I'm going to sue you. And it's a fully fitted walk-in vault.
And they basically judge they can't, there's no way of them moving it without them damaging the property.
Exactly.
And the other thing was when they, with the pharmacy itself, they had the vault for that as well. And when he moved in, and he got one of the people working there to shut themselves in there and scream as loud as they could just to see if it was soundproof. And then he let her out, and they never asked why he did that.
Well, that's a red flag if you're playing the ICMAP bingo at home.
It sure is. So May 1892, another likely Holmes mistress, Emmeline Segrande, began working in the building but disappeared in December. Rumours following her disappearance claimed she also became pregnant by Holmes, possibly being a victim of another failed abortion. 1893, Chicago hosted the World's Fair, a cultural and social event to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Columbus's discovery of America. The event was scheduled from May to October and attracted millions of people from all over the world. During this time, Holmes allegedly seduced and murdered a number of women, typically by becoming engaged to them and then killing them after securing control of their life savings. Many out-of-town visitors were reported to have entered the hotel and have never been seen again. This is a big moment when he was trying to expand the hotel and trying to have a lot more rooms to have people staying there because this was such a big event, and he knew there was going to be so many people there they could swindle with life insurance and possible victims there. But yeah, he was just relentless non-stop.
There are also claims that at this time Holmes would keep and then sell the bodies of his many victims to local medical schools, but it is likely that he simply dug up the bodies from graves to sell. So although all this is going on, the World's Fair, big hotel, big building, he's got his pharmacy to tend to as well, he's also still going to local graves, digging up bodies and performing old tricks. So the final model of the hotel reportedly included 2 upper levels containing Holmes's office and over 100 rooms that were used as living quarters. Some of these rooms were soundproofed and also contained gas lines. Throughout the building, there were trapdoors, peepholes, stairways that led to nowhere. The basement also had a dissecting table, stretching rack, and a crematorium. And yeah, and like we said before, this may have been exaggerated over time. It's been repeatedly told through the ages. I mean, the only evidence that we have is an external photo of the building. There's no internal photos. There are some quite interesting kind of internal graphics of what may have been the case. They're really interesting to see. Kind of reminds me of the Batcave from Batman.
There's a cave.
It's a very similar visually. I mean, I'll pop it up and maybe some people will back me again.
Maybe.
I'll pop it up now and please back me in the comment section. I'll be back to check. So Holmes also in the basement basically had some greased chutes that would line to the basement where he had 2 extremely large lime pits, which were allegedly used to speed up the decomposition of bodies.
So April 1893, Holmes met actress, some say heiress, Minnie Williams in an employment office and offered her a job at this hotel. He began a relationship with her and persuaded her to transfer the deed to her property in Texas to a man named Alexander Bond, an alias of Holmes, with Holmes serving as the notary. The next month, Holmes and Williams presented themselves as husband and wife, rented an apartment in Chicago's Lincoln Park.
This is the thing though, it just sounds so matter of fact, all these things that he's doing, but that's a massive thing in itself.
In the end.
Yeah. So June... crawling.
He's probably numb to it though, but that's
yeah.
fine.
June 1893, Minnie's sister Annie came to visit, and in July she wrote a letter to her aunt that explained that she would accompany her brother Harry to Europe. Minnie and Annie were never seen again. So you have to think that maybe Holmes penned that letter. Minnie Williams at the time lived at the hotel for more than a year and knew more about Holmes's crimes than any other person, which is quite an interesting note. Minnie was also believed to have instigated the murder of Emily Van Tassel, who was a young lady that lived on nearby Roby Street. She was only 17 and actually worked at a sweet shop in the first floor of the castle. There is no indication of what caused her to catch the eye of Holmes, but she vanished just 1 month after his offer of employment.
So the castle was the name given to the building. Many didn't think Holmes was taking the mickey. Throughout this time, Holmes travelled around the US committing insurance scams with an accomplice called Benjamin Pitezel. Once the World's Fair was over, the Chicago economy was in a slump, so Holmes abandoned the hotel in favour of pursuing the much more lucrative insurance scams. After Pitezel purchased a $10,000 life insurance policy, he and Holmes travelled to Colorado, Missouri, New York, Pennsylvania, Tennessee and Texas, where they committed other acts of fraud such as stealing horses from Texas and shipping them to St. Louis and selling them. It's also been speculated that Holmes also would carry on committing murders during this time. It's never really been specified. It's kind of a bit loose around this period of time, but following his normal behaviour, it wouldn't be unexpected.
1884. So early this particular year, Holmes marries once again, and this time he marries a supposed woman of a tarnished reputation, Georgiana Yoke, in Denver, Colorado. And whilst still married to both Clara and Myrta, Holmes meets Georgiana in a department store. He seduces her through his usual means and entices her to live a bigger, more glamorous life in Chicago. She believes Holmes's uncle had just died in Texas and left him a big property in Fort Worth, though this is actually the property that Minnie Williams's uncle had signed over to her. Not much is known about Georgiana, however, she is reported to have fled back to her family. Holmes was eventually arrested for insurance fraud after a fire at his home and jailed, although he was soon released.
So once Holmes is out of jail, Pitezel moved to Philadelphia and opened a fake patent office to swindle inventors. Holmes travelled to Philadelphia and attempted the same plan to fake Pitezel's death to receive the life insurance payout. So they're very fixated on this stage of the idea of faking deaths and claiming life insurance policies with the figure $10,000 being bounded around. In September 1894, the original plan was to find a cadaver to play the role of Pitezel, but instead Holmes decided to use the real thing. Holmes, he doesn't have any loyalty to any of these people that he obviously he's been killing his mistresses and wives and whatnot, but Holmes went to 1316 Kellow Hill and found Pitezel drunk and passed out, and this is real gaslighting and bitchy. Holmes had earlier forged a series of hurtful letters from Pitezel's wife, which caused Pitezel to start drinking. He bound Pitezel's hands and feet and knocked Pitezel unconscious with chloroform and burnt him alive. He eventually collected the insurance and convinced Pitezel's widow, Carrie, who had been aware of her husband's involvement in the insurance scheme, that her husband was still alive and living in London. Later giving her $500 of the money he collected, Holmes also manipulated Pitezel's widow into allowing 3 of her children, Alice, Nellie and Howard, into his custody, claiming he had left them with a female cousin whilst the insurance scam was ongoing.
This guy.
How he's managed to manipulate all these people is absolutely bizarre.
20th of September 1894, Alice wrote to her mother several times, with one letter reading, "Just arrived in Philadelphia this morning. I am going to the morgue after a while. We stopped off at Washington this morning, and that made it 6 times that we transferred to different cars. Mr. H says that I will have a ride on the ocean. I wish you could see what I have seen. I have seen more scenery than I have ever seen since I was born. You had better not write me here, for Mr. H says that I may be off tomorrow." These letters were never sent, and Holmes kept them in a tin box. Holmes would then drag the children from city to city to complete various schemes. So basically, he's manipulating these children as if they were his own, and sometimes took them to the zoo, which Alice then would also write to her mother about. After months of scamming, he finally stopped in Canada, where Holmes forced Pitezel's daughters Alice and Nellie into a trunk and gassed them to death by leaking gas from the lamp into the trunk. He then buried their bodies inside the basement of a rental house. A detective named Frank Geyer found the bodies later on and noticed that Nellie's feet were missing. He eventually discovered that Nellie had a club foot and theorized that Holmes had removed it in order to prevent any possible identification of the body, as it was a distinctive body part. Meanwhile, in Indianapolis, Holmes visited a local pharmacy to purchase drugs, which he later used to kill Pitezel's son, Howard. After killing Howard, Holmes mutilated his body and removed his teeth before placing his body inside a chimney.
No real MO in terms of who he's killing.
No.
Man, woman or child, any age.
This is why, to me, to go back to the very start of the episode when I said so much of this seems like myth and urban legend that it couldn't possibly be real. Every part of this timeline is just some ridiculous new twist and turn, escalation. This guy, he could manipulate anyone.
In November 1894, Hedgepath, who was angry that he did not receive any money in the initial scam, told police about the scam Holmes had planned. So the police tracked Holmes, finally catching up to him in Boston, where they arrested him and held him on a stand-in warrant for attempting to defraud Fidelity Mutual Insurance. At the time of his arrest, Holmes appeared as if he was prepared to flee the country, and police became suspicious of him. Chicago police investigated Holmes' hotel, where they discovered his strange and efficient methods for committing torturous murders. Many of the bodies they located were so badly dismembered and decomposed that it was hard for them to determine exactly how many bodies were really there. So it just goes to show the absolute carnage that they found.
20th of November 1894, Carrie Pitezel confesses to attempting to defraud the Fidelity Mutual Insurance by faking her husband's death with the help of H.H. Holmes. She tells them that she fears that Holmes has killed her husband. The police then look further into Holmes' travels, and whilst conducting their investigation in Toronto, police discovered the bodies of the Pitezel children, who had gone missing sometime during Holmes' insurance fraud spree. Linking Holmes to their murders, police immediately arrested him and he was convicted for their murders. 15th of July 1895, the bodies of Pitezel's daughters are found buried in a basement in Toronto. When Carrie Pitezel was called to identify her girls' bodies, all that was left of Nellie was her thick black braid. The rest of her body had decomposed entirely.
So 28th of July 1895, police discovered 2 graves in the basement of Holmes' hotel. So the 2nd of August 1895, Patrick Quinlan, who constructed much of Holmes' hotel, opted to give the state evidence against Holmes, as did his wife, who also worked for Holmes.
28th of October 1895, Holmes was tried in Philadelphia for the murder of Pitezel. 2nd of November 1895, the jury deliberated for just 2.5 hours before returning a guilty verdict. Holmes is convicted of the murder of Benjamin Pitezel and sentenced to death by hanging. Afterward, the jury reported that they had agreed on the verdict in just 1 minute, but had remained out longer for the sake of appearances. Holmes confessed to 27 murders. He later increased the total to more than 130, though some researchers have suggested the real number exceeded 200.
The 7th of May 1896, H.H. Holmes is hanged by Moyamensing Prison, also known as the Philadelphia County Prison, 9 days before his 36th birthday. A huge crowd showed up for the execution. Spectators had to be driven back by lines of policemen. A certain number of tickets were granted for the execution, but twice that got inside by sheer force. At the gallows, Holmes made a brief statement denying he killed Pitezel or his children. The executioner's hands trembled, and Holmes was heard saying, "Take your time, old man." And apparently when the executioner did let Holmes drop, it didn't actually break his neck. Instead, he died a slow death, his body twitching, and he was pronounced dead 20 minutes later. When I said take your time, old man, I did not mean this. I specifically meant before you pull the thing. Just 15 minutes in. It's not what I meant, old man. That is the end of the timeline. Now we're going to look into some aftermath, but before we do that, we're going to throw to our resident doctor, Dr. Das, for some more in-depth insight into H.H. Holmes' psyche.
Hello, everybody. My name's Dr. Shaham Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist and a YouTuber for the channel Psych for Sore Minds. Here's my psychoanalysis of the Holmes case. So Holmes has often been described as America's first serial killer. But what I think is interesting is that he's quite unusual for a serial killer, because usually they have this psychological urge. Either it can be a sexual desire or like a compulsion for bloodlust. But I think in Holmes' case, most of his killings had like a practical motive. There was a purpose. So he either got rid of somebody that knew too much, or somebody that was getting in his way, or he believed couldn't be trusted. So it seems that his murders were for protecting and upkeeping his lifestyle. So what I'm getting at is that I view him more as a con artist who murdered rather than a serial killer who committed, cons. And also we have to remember that this was all happening in the late 1800s. And obviously around that time, there was limited abilities for the police to detect these kind of criminals. There was less record keeping, etc. Another thing that really strikes me about the Holmes case is his astounding lack of empathy or shame. So he's even killed his own friends. He killed his co-defendant, Pitezel. He killed Pitezel's children. He killed ex-schoolmates, lovers who became inconvenience. You've got to wonder if he had any kind of connection, or if he was able to love anybody, or if he could even feel love. Now, I think you could argue that most serial killers have a lack of empathy for their victims. I think that's true. I think most serial killers will struggle on one level with their morality. Not this dude. He didn't care about killing people, even if they were close to him. And then, of course, there's the murder castle, which was equipped with, as we know, secret passages, trapdoors, gas jets, a kiln to cremate the bodies. So to me, that all demonstrates like this level of organisation and intention. This wasn't just impulsive. So Holmes confessed to 27 murders, although apparently some of the people that he claimed to have killed were actually still alive. And he was paid a large sum of money from the newspapers in exchange for his confession, even though some of it was found out to be untrue, to be nonsense. So that begs the question, why was he doing that? What was his motivation for lying? And for me, it was all about sensationalization. So it was just another con. It was just another way to make money. But I think on top of that, there could have been some confusion because some people estimate that he killed around 200 people. So with those kind of figures, it's not surprising that he might be confused about some of the details. Another thing that really strikes me about Holmes was his behaviour around the time of his death. And apparently, even up until the moment of his death, he remained calm, stable, and he showed very few signs of fear. And I think that's relevant, and I'll come back to why. Despite that, Holmes asked for his coffin to be contained in cement and buried 10 feet deep, apparently because he was worried about grave robbers. And I think we'd all agree that's quite a bizarre and specific kind of request, which indicates that he's a bit paranoid. And I think his paranoia is understandable. I think it developed naturally over time because of his circumstances, as opposed to, for example, because of psychosis or mental illness. He had enough scams and he buried enough bodies and there was enough skeletons in his closet that he must have been paranoid about something unraveling and him being found out and revealed, which obviously did happen eventually. When it comes to serial killers, the term psychopath is often overused, I think, and there's a misconception where people just assume that psychopathy is related to ununderstandable violence. But I think Holmes actually is a classic psychopath. So as well as the basics, lack of empathy, acting impulsively, not caring about the rights and wrongs of other people, having no qualms about breaking the laws, he clearly had all of those things. But what really stands out to me is he was highly manipulative. So he managed to convince multiple partners to sign over their life insurance. He convinced multiple co-defendants to join him in his cons. And he had this string of accomplices, which some of whom he ended up killing. So that really shows how charming and persuasive he must have been. On top of all of that, he had some of the what I would call the softer kind of associations of psychopathy. So we know he was sexually promiscuous. We know he was charming. Plus, we know he was quite criminally versatile. So, forget about the murders, just the grave robbing, the fraud, all of those things, plus his lack of fear. So that's something that really differentiates a psychopath from an average person, is that they can't feel or they can't internalize fear. And that was shown by his calm demeanor, even when he was about to be hanged. But for me, the biggest telltale sign is something that I mentioned before, is just his ability to end the lives of people that he was supposed to be his friends and his lovers and partners so heartlessly. So that in a nutshell is my psychoanalysis of Holmes. If you're interested in that kind of thing, you've got to go and check out my YouTube channel, A Psych for Sore Minds. It's like a crossover between true crime and mental illness. Got a range of videos on loads of different things. Recently, I've discussed the psychology behind domestic violence, the psychology behind stalking. So go and check it out. Right, that's enough for me. Back to Ben and Tom.
So thank you very much to Dr. Das, and if you haven't already, why not subscribe to his channel, A Psych for Sore Minds, on YouTube? We'll pop the link in the description below. It's got a wide selection of other videos available, so why not click over and have a little browse?
Yes, indeedy.
So one thing before we jump into the aftermath.
Oh.
A lot of the documentaries we watch, podcasts we listen to, they all start with the quote. Oh. We're going to plonk it in the middle of the episode, kind of without any kind of organization or thought.
You can do an accent.
I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer. No more than a poet can help the inspiration to sing. I was born with the evil one standing as my sponsor beside the bed where I was ushered into the world. And he has been with me since. Basically saying,
I'm a naughty boy. And I was always going to do this, so don't hold it against me too much.
spot on. That's
That's the
modern day
yeah.
H.H. Holmes.
It's, the language, they just sound a lot cooler, doesn't it? Born the devil inside me. So we're going to look in a little bit at the aftermath now, just go through some things that happened afterwards and other things that, influenced Holmes as well. So when Holmes's confession was printed in the paper, it took up more than 4 full pages of the newspaper. And this included illustrations of the house on Cowboy Street. So this is very ironic. A man who spent a lot of his spare time digging up bodies and selling them, Holmes was very fearful of grave robbers, and he had explicit instructions for his burial, and a man did actually offer a large sum of money for his body afterwards. He was buried in a grave 10 feet deep and 8 feet long.
And people were shorter back then as well, so that's really deep.
In the coffin, Holmes's face was covered with a cloth and cement was poured over every part of his body. 13 men dragged the coffin to the grave. The weight of the coffin was so great, it fell into the grave upside down, and instead of facing the heavens, he faced hell. Which is quite apt.
That one, yeah. Just before his execution, Holmes was visited by 2 Catholic priests in his cell, and he even took communion with them, although he refused to ask forgiveness for his crimes.
Probably just wanted the wine.
Yeah, I could see that.
And a moan. So the castle was remodeled as an attraction named the Holmes Horror Castle. However, it burned to the ground shortly before its opening, after witnesses reportedly saw 2 men enter the building late one night.
The idea that existed, though, and that there were trapdoors and stairways leading to nowhere, and I think at one point there was a maze and a hanging chamber, soundproof rooms, that itself is, I still don't know what to believe exactly. Because what can be evidence? What can be proven?
As well, because there's like little gaps and trapdoors and little like gaps between rooms. So some people believe that so he could watch people and view people, but some people working there apparently would use them just sleep in and just kind of hide away. They knew about them, they weren't bothered about them. They just kind of
cozy.
He's a weird guy. I'm sure you're gonna have a nap in there. It's so bizarre when you're going to mix it all together. Like most things, there's conspiracy theories that go along with this. I'll go through some of them quickly now. Jack the Ripper. Jeff Mudgett, a lawyer and former commander in the US Naval Reserve, claims that his great-great-grandfather, H.H. Holmes, was in fact Jack the Ripper. Mudgett bases his assertions on the writings in 2 diaries that he inherited from Holmes, which details Holmes's participation in the murder and mutilation of numerous prostitutes in London. But a handwriting expert dismissed any possibility of this, saying that the handwriting did not match the Ripper's handwriting. Yeah,
we'll pop the photos up. There are some similarities, but again, if you're the great-great-great-grandson, it's a weird thing to put forward about your own family.
Well, again, he was common as well in terms of Holmes, so maybe he changed his handwriting quite easily. Maybe he wanted to make a quick buck from his great-great-granddad as well.
Mudgett also claims that the man that died in the public hanging that took place on May the 7th, 1896, was in fact not H.H. Holmes, but rather a man that Holmes tricked into going into the gallows in his place. Might not have even been the true, authentic H.H. Holmes that was hanged or hung.
Apparently in the execution, one story claimed that a lightning bolt had ripped through the sky at the precise moment the rope had snapped his neck, but it didn't snap his neck. We know that he was left to ride in pain for 20 minutes, but it's quite a dramatic scene that they're painting there. Then there's also a thing called the Holmes curse, which basically is essentially people involved around the case prosecuting him would go on to later suffer sudden deaths, which blood poisoning and a sudden stroke and heart attack. I think 3 or 4 people around the case would go on to pass very shortly afterwards. It's kind of like the Exorcist curse that people say. It's just people just die. The last one is quite an interesting one, Ben.
Yeah, slightly more modern. So Meghan Markle is apparently a distant relation to H.H. Holmes.
M.M. Windsor.
According to Meet the Markles, a new television documentary series produced by Channel 4, the former Suits star Meghan Markle is a distant relation to H.H. Holmes, America's first serial killer.
All right, Ben, it is that time where we both make a mockery of ourselves and say lookalikes. How have you done for this one?
Shockingly.
I feel confident with this one.
I think you're going to get it.
Shall I go first?
Oh, you can, yeah. Well, I mean, my one's going to annoy you, first of all. I'll just give you that warning in advance.
That's fine. I'm going with Daniel Day-Lewis from There Will Be Blood.
Very, very, very good shout. I can already tell. Yeah.
Usually it's him with the cowboy hat, but even just those ones, it looks quite...
He would play him very well.
Yeah, that one there.
Yeah. I can't really compete with that. I mean, I asked
Go on,
for...
annoy me.
Well, I'll give you the easy one. I thought it would be too obvious to go with Charles Bronson because that was very obvious. So I reached out to my family group chat. I said, look, guys, really need some lookalikes for this, but please, no Charles Bronson. So I sent that message to the chat. My mum instantly replied, bless her. Tom Hardy from that prison movie, which is
Charles Bronson.
Which is Bronson. Now, the one I'm going to annoy you with, Tom, is not really a lookalike.
Okay.
It's more of a concept.
They're just wearing the same clothes.
I feel like Now, stick with me, boys.
I'm going to scroll down. Go on.
I feel like H.H. Holmes and Albert Fish could easily be brothers, or like step-brothers that don't really get along. So my concept is if you put them side by side, same hat, same mustache, not really a lot going on similarly facially, but I feel like they would make a great back and forth between the two of them, maybe like a Laurel and Hardy.
Chuckle Brothers.
Chuckle Brothers is a great shout.
The darkest Chuckle Brothers.
Yeah, the one movie I really thought it was like, but I can't think of the movie, is basically there's a mouse and two brothers trying to sell a house, but the mouse is in the house.
Mousetrap?
Could be Mousetrap, yeah. Could very well be Mousetrap.
Lee Evans?
Yes, Lee Evans is in it, yeah. And a guy that looks like Hardy. Could see them also, the pair of them in Wacky Races together.
You kind of verged away from the lookalikes there.
Yeah, just concept, as I said.
Yeah.
It's going to annoy you, as I said.
It's not annoying me, it's just...
Yeah. But yeah, I think I would... Albert Fish, the Fish and Holmes gang.
So guys, we hope you enjoyed the case of H.H. Holmes, the devil inside the man. A lot to take in there. A lot to take, and he took a lot inside his hotels.
Very much, yeah.
Twist it, bop it, pass it, flick it.
Mudge it.
I said that at the beginning of it.
I didn't hear that part, sorry. An episode that we have wanted to cover for quite some time. So as always, we really appreciate all the lovely feedback, all of the kind comments. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button. If you don't follow us already on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the lovely communities out there, why not consider following? That's how to best stay in the loop of all the things that we do. And you're not going to want to miss next week's big episode.
No, and also don't forget to give us a rating and on the audios as well, because it does really help us. iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to us, a little rating on there would be very much appreciated. It does help more than you'll ever know. And if you want more content, we have a Patreon. It costs roughly about £1 a week. There's 57, at this stage, probably 60 minisodes on there.
Probably 60, yeah.
And a lot of new series strands are doing in there as well. So go over there and you can nominate different cases on there, and it'll do polls. It's very interactive. So be sure to head over there. It's a lot of fun.
And if you would like something a little bit more physical, why not head over to icmap.store, which is our merch store. We're fully stocked at the moment, guys and girls. We have got hats, we have got totes, we have got jumpers, sweaters, t-shirts, badges,
Oh, badges.
candles, sticker packs, and bundle packages.
But all that,
All the lot.
posters.
There you go.
Poster. We got there in the end.
We're fully stocked, I promise.
Yeah, if anything, too much stock. So if you could try and help us out a bit, because it's a bit cramped. A bit cramped in the stock room.
And just by becoming a Patreon backer, you unlock an exclusive discount to the store. So
Well,
two
Ben,
birds.
that sounds really good. Maybe I should sign up to it and get discount off from the store.
Why not?
Okay. And of course, a big shout out to Gully Gums once again. And go over there and use our discount code MURDER20, 20% off. Those gums are Gully, and they will get you. And we regularly look over there and we're like, oh, gonna need some more of those. Or those clothes.
Yeah, 100%. Guys and girls, all things Gully at gullygarms.com.
Yes, indeed. And guys, like we always say,
We say this all of the time.
keep doing what you're doing.
Wow, that's its elaborate corridors and staircases and
Leave the cadavers be.
trapdoors,
Leave the cadavers be.
lime pits, vaults that you're not taking that vault back.
All right, guys. Until next time. 2 Pip.
See ya.
Take it easy.
Take it easy.
2 Pip.
Bye. See ya.
Hello and welcome to I Can Murder a Podcast, episode number 7 of series 5. I'm Tom Norris and I'm joined by, once again, it is Ben Carter.
Hello, hello, hello. It's good to be back. It's good to be sat at a slightly different angle today with you. A pleasure, in fact, at that. Hello, I'm Ben.